Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a sour IPA from Evil Twin Brewing Company. It's been a long time since I've reviewed one of their beers, and obviously big IPA fan, love sour. Sour IPAs are a nice, cool kind of hybrid of the two styles. This specific beer is called What Even Is a Blue Raspberry Anyway? It's 7% ABV on this one, and exactly as described, it is a sour IPA brewed with blue raspberries. Evil Twin Brewing Company is based in New York City. This specifically on the can says Queens. I presume they have multiple brewing facilities, but Queens, if you need the specifics. So, label art on this. It's just blue raspberries on the label. And yes, blue raspberries are a very real thing. They're a very specific variety of raspberries that do have a blue hue to them. So it's not just a made-up candy flavor, it is an actual fruit. So we're going to get this cracked and poured into our nice all-purpose IPA glass. This poured right in. All right. Oh, wow. So there's this kind of bluish-greenish hue to this beer. Obviously, malt is yellow, and you add blue, and yellow and blue make green. So the skins of the raspberry in this beer are definitely imparting very much a color. Yeah, this actually is almost a lime green in the glass. It is very, very unique looking for a beer. Extremely active in terms of carbonation. I mean, just a rush of carbonation coming all up, just rushing up in here. Mix of tiny, really fine champagne-like bubbles. In fact, the camera may be picking some of those up, kind of rushing on the side, and some medium size, but it looks quite nice. Formed a pretty good head. Gonna get right over for a sniff. Oh, wow. Yeah, okay, so it smells distinctly of raspberry, and you can distinctly smell the classic tart and sour from the fact that it's a sour IPA. There's no real hoppy aromas at all on this. It's dominated by that raspberry and the kind of sour and the tart. You can also smell a good bit of that underlying malt bill. This one does have those kind of almost like Gosa-esque kind of aromas where it's got this kind of doughy, bready, crusty kind of aroma behind it. But it smells fantastic, looks extremely unique. I'm going to jump right in and see what this one's about. Bottoms up. Ooh. Yeah, that's really nice. That's really nice. Okay, so this beer's reminding me of a lot of different things. Before I jump into that, I'm going to tell you about the body and the mouthfeel. Body on this one feels a nice strong medium. Exactly what I'd expect for an IPA sitting at 7%. Mouthfeel, it's got a normal amount of resistance, but this one does get very creamy when you agitate on the palate. It feels even thicker when you move it around. But it feels exactly right for the ABV range. For the flavor profile here, the first thing you get when you swallow is indeed a nice sharp bite of tart and sour, but it's not astringently tart or sour. It feels appropriate, it's almost like sour blue raspberry candy in a beer form. And that raspberry flavor, the blue raspberry, really does jump out at you. It very much tastes like raspberry because they taste like raspberries, but it's got this nice sour and tart back to it. So there is this real sense of a candy-like quality to this beer. What I was smelling in terms of the malt bill really does translate into the glass. This actually, it may be a sour IPA, but the way that it's structured, it really does put me in mind a lot of like a Gosa or something along those lines where the malt bill is very grain-like, very cereal forward. So it's got this kind of doughy, crusty, breadcrumb kind of quality to it. And that's mixed with the sour and the tart and the blue raspberry flavor that jumps out. It's absolutely delicious. In fact, there's elements of this that really do remind me of like a much bigger, more intense Berliner Weisse or Gosa, though this is not briny like a Gosa would be. But that's really where it's putting me most in mind. And yes, it may be at its core an IPA with added fruit and souring, but this is not a bitter IPA. It's not supposed to be. It's a sour IPA. So yes, of course there's hops in here, but they're not dominating the aroma profile at all. And they're certainly not dominating the flavor profile at all. In fact, I would say whatever hops that they used were not used really for bittering in this beer at all. Maybe just for some added nuances of aroma and flavor. And they picked specific varieties, I would presume, that would pair well with this nice kind of fruit-centric quality that the beer has. But what I have to say, it's absolutely delicious. It really does put me in mind of like a sour blue raspberry candy in beer form. That's exactly what this is to me, and I think it's fantastic for that. So, I'm going to jump back in, second sip, get a fresh reset, let everything re-intensify, see if I missed anything, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the finish. But I am really enjoying this. A very unique beer, and I think Evil Twin did a great job with this one. Sour tart raspberry right up front. The sour and tart is really a big kick up front, and it quickly dies back. Within the first second or two, it's just moderate residual sours and tartness, and then it really lets that blue raspberry flavor come out and speak. And right about the same time when the sour tart backs off and the raspberry kind of comes to the forefront, that's really when the subtleties of the malt bill start to speak as well. And with every passing second after each sip, the malt bill becomes more prominent. And it kind of balances us out to where there's leftover residual raspberry flavor and this underlying malt bill flavor. And they kind of sit on an even parity. It's almost 50-50 after that initial sharpness of the sour tart and that backs down, and then it becomes just raspberry malt bill. It's almost 50-50, equal parts of both flavors. And it's really, really nice. It's very clean. Yes, this is a sour IPA, but it is not a dry finish at all. The souring on this does not make a dryness on the palate at all. Indeed, it's very wet. But in terms of the finish, like I said, there's no big hop bittering in this. There's not supposed to be. So the finish is not as long as you would get on a typical IPA. It's longer than you may expect, say for a sour IPA, and that really does come down to the intensity of this raspberry flavor. It's quite pronounced. It's not the souring at all that extends the length on the back, and it's really not even the malt bill that gets extended. It's this haunting just bit of that blue raspberry on the back of the palate, and it's really, really nice. It tastes very, very cleanly and distinctly of blue raspberry and almost like blue raspberry candy. I think it's absolutely fantastic. People that maybe don't even go for sour beers or certainly sour IPAs, but you like blue raspberry candy, I think you would absolutely love this beer. This is really good. It's a really cool, fun beer to make, and I think Evil Twin pulled it off. If this is what they were going for, kind of a blue raspberry flavored candy in sour IPA form, I think they absolutely nailed it. I personally find this very cool, absolutely delicious, very unique, and I'm enjoying drinking on this beer, and I will certainly continue to do so. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, comment my scores. When we come back, we'll get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Evil Twin Brewing Company's What Even is a Blue Raspberry Anyway, a sour IPA brewed with blue raspberries. This one clocked in at 7% ABV. Evil Twin Brewing Company is based in New York City. Specifically, this was at Queens. I don't know if they have facilities in any of the other boroughs, but on the can, Queens. Okay, nonetheless, so starting with the aroma. The aroma on this beer was very, very nice. As expected on a sour IPA, yes, you could really smell the souring and the tart jump right out at you, and the blue raspberry was really also quite pronounced. There was no real suggestion of any other underlying kind of hop qualities. Just the sour and the tart and the added fruit was very, very pungent. That's what jumped out. It was well above average. The aroma gets a 9 out of 10. For the taste on this one was absolutely fantastic. Sour IPA. It's an IPA at its core, still the base style, but the souring side really changes the entire equation. This is not a bitter beer style. It's not meant to be. It did have underlying other hop characteristics, such as other additional aromas and flavors that come from the hops that they add. However, in this one, again, because of the souring and because of the amount of blue raspberries, that really took the forefront. So this one was all about that kick of sour and tart, and then just this big burst of blue raspberry. Is absolutely delicious. Not oppressively sour or tart. You got a nice kick up front, then it backed off. There's just this big, intense blue raspberry flavor that just really dominated. Absolutely phenomenal taste. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the body, this was textbook IPA, exactly as expected for the ABV range. Body gets a 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel, same story here. It had the exact right amount of resistance for the ABV range. This one did get really nicely creamy when you agitated. Mouthfeel, 10 out of 10. For the finish on sour IPAs tend to be quite a bit different than their standard IPA counterparts because they're not driven by bitters. And yes, this wasn't astringently sour or tart, but frankly, the intensity of the blue raspberry on this really did help drive the finish out an impressively long amount of time for a sour substyle. Finish gets an 8 out of 10. For the head and retention, this one did okay, really just low end of average. It stuck around for just a few seconds, and then it more or less got settled. You know, it's also a sour substyle, so it's not going to be quite the same as you typically see in a standard IPA. But it was okay. Head retention gets a 4 out of 10. For the appearance, this was a really interesting looking beer. Very bright bluish green from the blue raspberry edition. Stunning looking beer. Obviously, we all know blue plus yellow equals green, so it was a little more green than blue, but still a really cool looking beer in the glass. Appearance gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance on this beer was absolutely fantastic. The balance of the souring that they did, so it had this nice kick of sharpness, but not too intense up front, and still backed off and let you experience that, and then opened up into this big fruit addition flavor that was just dominant. It was absolutely fantastic. I think that's how to balance a beer like this. They nailed it. Balance, 10 out of 10. Feeling the intangible subjectively, I thought this one was fantastic. 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style. Overall, this beer did phenomenally well in most categories. Lost just a few in a couple, but nothing really all that critical. For what this was, I think they absolutely nailed it. A very cool sour IPA. Certainly the first like it I've had that's out in the marketplace, and this one I think they did exceptionally well. Example of the style gets a 10 out of 10, which brings the total score on Evil Twin Brewing Company's What Even is a Blue Raspberry Anyway to a 91 out of 100. So this is well above average. If you've tried some sour IPAs, maybe you don't normally drink IPAs, but you like sours. If you haven't tried the sour IPA sub-style, give it a whirl. It doesn't lean heavily on bitters. It leans a lot more on the sours. It's just got the breadth and the presence that you get from an IPA. And this one was fantastic. This blue raspberry, it was stunning to look at in the glass, and it was absolutely fantastic. This is one I would recommend to any fan of sour beers or sour IPAs or IPAs in general. Absolutely worth your time. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.